Pika! Pika pika! Pika! See that? She really likes me.
Yeah.
Detective Pikachu is probably one of the most intriguing Pokemon spin-offs that I've seen. Pokemon Conquest is still a strategic battle RPG. Pokemon Snap is about taking pictures, which works with the world of Pokemon, because in that world, the Pokemon are animals, basically. Mystery Dungeon is just another form of RPG, and Pokemon Pinball is Pokemon Pinball. But Detective Pikachu makes no sense.
Amelia! What a nice name!
Like, you take Pokemon and turn it into a puzzle-solving game, add detective elements to it, and give Pikachu a bootleg Danny DeVito voice. And you have this game.
The coffee smells so good!
Pikachu! Thunderbolt!
Hey, don't boss me around!
So, the biggest question is, should you play this game before you see the movie? The most important aspects to compare between the two is obviously the story. The movie isn't out yet, so I can't compare them now, but once it does, I'll be making a follow-up video. For now, I'll just give you my thoughts on the game's story. In terms of characters, it's pretty fun. The interactions between characters, especially ones that involve Pikachu, make for a great time. The main character, Tim Goodman, is pretty bland though. His dad went missing in a car crash with Pikachu, and Tim's out to find him. He has no arc though, and there's moments of him lashing out in anger or a tease at possible romance, but otherwise he's just a nice and calm guy. Pikachu is full of character. He thinks pretty highly of himself, tries to hit on human girls, but unlike what the live-action Japanese trailer depicts, Pikachu does not win a human girl over. Throughout the course of the game, you'll meet a bunch of characters, most of which you'll only know for a chapter of the game, so you won't get to know them too well. Amelia is a reoccurring character in the game, who for some reason keeps bumping into Tim. I think how they handled her was very interesting. I want to keep this as spoiler-free as possible, but I don't know how I'd explain this without just slightly spoiling it. So just mute your PC right now, and once the video turns green, you can unmute it. Okay, 3, 2, 1. I actually suspected Amelia was a bad guy. The fact that she kept running into you and that the main villain worked at the same news station as her gave me that vibe. In the end, it wasn't her, but I just want to point that out. Okay, it's all green now. Amelia also says she regrets doing a specific news report near the end of the game, but they don't really build on that. In the end, she's mainly used to progress the plot, since she has access to a lot of things Tim wouldn't. The overall mystery is pretty gripping though. I think the game builds up the story pretty well. Early on in the game, you find out what the main threat is. You just need to know who's using it and how it's going to be used. I was completely engaged in everything that was unfolding. I was also impressed at the amount of voice acting and animated cutscenes there were crammed into this game. Pretty impressive for a 3DS. The world building is also great as you get to see Pokemon being used for stuff other than battling. But when Pokemon were battling, they were used in a realistic manner. They shot attacks at the environment and people, which is great to see. I just realized how weird it is that villains in the main Pokemon games attack the trainers' Pokemon, but not the trainers who lead and make the big decisions. Now, here's the biggest issue with Detective Pikachu's story. And this involves spoilers, so just skip to this timestamp if you want to avoid them. Okay, in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so nothing the game establishes at the beginning are solved. You never find out what happened to Tim's dad, how Mewtwo knows where Tim's dad is, and what Mewtwo meant by choosing which form Pikachu wanted. Was this done to set up a sequel? I don't know, because this game came out in 2016 for Japan, and it's already 2019, and we still have no word on a sequel. The closest thing we may get to a sequel is the sequel to the movie. But maybe there isn't supposed to be a sequel. Maybe they dropped off a bunch of clues about what happened to Tim's dad. And in that case, Pikachu and Tim's dad are fused together? That's what it seems like. Pikachu loves coffee, which is apparently a trait he never had before the car crash, but instead was a trait of Tim's dad. Mewtwo asks what form Pikachu chose, and for some reason put Pikachu to sleep? So what? Does Mewtwo have the power to fuse Pokemon and humans together? Then he has the power to switch them between human and Pokemon? But if that's the case, Pikachu should have known that he was Tim's father, since he had the option to pick between forms, but the game ends with Tim and Pikachu going out to find his father. I'm so confused here. Is there a cancelled sequel? Why can Tim talk to Pikachu? That wasn't solved either. But overall, while Detective Pikachu presents an interesting detective story, has fun character interactions, and builds on the Pokemon world a lot more, the characters end up having no story arcs, and that would have been fine if what we discussed in the spoilers was fixed, or if they fixed it in the sequel. I think it's a pretty worthwhile story to look into, but should you actually play the game, or check out a playthrough? This isn't your traditional Pokemon game. Every mechanic is solely based around solving mysteries. There are no battles to take part in, all the action happens during cutscenes, and the closest you'll get to interacting with the action is very simple quick-time events. Personally, I've never played a detective game before, so this was my first time going into one. I have no bias from playing games such as Professor Layton or Ace Attorney or anything. All I expect from a detective game is that it requires you to evaluate the evidence thoroughly to come up with a conclusion. So what do I think of the gameplay? Well, firstly, it's pretty repetitive. Going up to a bunch of people and asking questions gets really boring. I tried to ask the least amount of questions possible, and only ask the ones I think would progress the game, but at the same time, you could just ask all the questions, so if you do ask a wrong question, you don't need to backtrack to ask the right one. This game is also completely linear. Pikachu is definitely a great detective since he's always guiding you. He almost always tells you who to talk to next once you gather enough clues. But if you do get the chance to choose what to do or make your final decision on who the culprit is of a case, there's no way you could get the answer wrong, because if you pick a wrong answer, Pikachu will just tell you you're wrong and you get to retry. There's no punishment to failing, which means there's no danger, and the gameplay just boils down to select the correct option, and if you select the wrong one, then just select the right one. You just keep trying different things until you meet a conclusion. To make a good detective game, you either need to earn your way to the conclusion by solving difficult puzzles and completing difficult challenges, or they could go with the multiple ending option and you'll get a different ending based on the cases you solved correctly. I don't expect multiple endings in a game made for the 3DS, and even if the game was made for home consoles, I still wouldn't expect all the work to be put into multiple story routes, simply because Detective Pikachu is an experimental spin-off. I think at its heart, Detective Pikachu is a kid's game, and it doesn't make for a great one. Even if the gameplay is bland, it's made even blander when you can solve who committed a crime before you're allowed to solve it. So Detective Pikachu isn't very good. I think you should just avoid it completely, and if you want some of the fun dialogue and intriguing mystery, just watch a playthrough or something. But what about the movie? How does the story of the game compare to a piece of media made solely to tell stories? We will be finding that out next week, so you better subscribe if you want to get notified about that video. And if you did like this video, give it a like. If you want to interact with me, why don't you leave a comment, or follow my Twitter, or maybe even join my Discord server. But like at the end of every video, I'll be seeing you guys in the next video.